Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Amy Janvier, and my presentation explores the world of education, initiating change within an academic setting, and composting. Out of curiosity, by a show of hands, how many people compost at home? Wow, that's great. How many of you compost at work? Not as many. Well, instituting change within an occupational or an organizational setting is a little bit more challenging, tricky than starting a home composting, but it's not impossible. I hear you, Steph. So anyone associated with Antioch, even peripherally, is likely familiar with the concept of composting, if not the exact science of it all. It's commonly defined as the process by which organic matter decomposes and is purposefully recycled into a useful soil conditioner. So nature is smarter than humans. It doesn't waste anything. So it knows there are valuable nutrients to be derived from food waste, even if it ends up simply becoming food for worms or other microorganisms. Composting for people is easy. Consider the amount of food waste in the average American household. From food scraps during prep to what you toss into the trash afterwards, roughly 40% of residential food waste in America is compostable. So why not put all that food to good use? Much like recycling, which I'm sure we all can agree is a hearty, good endeavor to undertake, compost is great for the environment. It reduces the amount of waste transported to landfills, and because all that organic material is omitted, it reduces the amount of methane gas released into the atmosphere. So it's good for climate change too. It's also great for people. It can help your garden, whether vegetables or flowers, be more bountiful and beautiful because of all the extra nutrients it's absorbing. It's also great for landscaping. So think of the vitamin D and the fresh air you could be getting on a day like today, which we're fortunate and haven't had recently. There are so many uses for food waste. Composting is merely one, and it's environmentally friendly and useful. The state of New Hampshire is getting wise to the idea that food composting can be a valuable addition to its waste management streams, as well as reducing the potential for air and water pollution from its landfills. Several towns already employ leaf and yard debris pickup, Keene being one of them. So our immediate neighbors know how valuable and important these steps can be. Maine, Vermont, and Massachusetts all have either composting programs or regulations such as food waste bans, especially for businesses. Vermont was one of the first states to adopt a U.S. food waste ban, and their goal is to ban all food scraps from their municipal landfills by 2020. Massachusetts has a goal to divert 35% of all its food waste from its landfills by 2020. Since the early 90s, Maine's been on board, steadily working towards a goal of annually reducing the solid waste it generates by half through recycling and composting programs, including outdoor land and yard debris. They're also home to the famous Maine Compost School, which is the longest running compost school in the United States. Connecticut, too, is on board with numerous programs in a variety of schools. They've been taking a hint from their neighbors in New York City, who successfully instituted a compost program in New York City, which is kind of astounding to me, I thought. Rhode Island remains the only New England state that has yet to incorporate a citywide food scrap collection program. However, during my research, I found that there are plans in the works to changing that. So it seems many of these state legislatures know that treating organic materials as a resource rather than a waste makes sense both economically and environmentally. New Hampshire's finally jumping on the municipal wagon. A task force of sorts has already been established, headed by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, to establish a statewide municipal compost program, and consists of average citizens, leaders in local businesses such as waste management, members of the NERC and the NRRA, not the NRA. That's the Northeast Resource Recovery Association. The task force subgroups are the pilot program, and they are tasked with deciding whether a municipal compost program is manageable, best practices for it, and the best location for it to try it out. Ideally, it will be one with a sizable waste management facility and the site parameters to accommodate composting. To my knowledge, they are not yet considering a curbside pickup program. However, there is an ES master student that is currently pursuing that avenue. Another subgroup is rules and regulations. So they're in charge of examining all the facts, restrictions, environmental regulations, and potential legal ramifications when starting such a project. And the third subgroup is outreach and education. Their duties revolve around educating the public about the environmental and financial benefits of composting. They offer instructions and assistance with the how-tos, soliciting feedback, and getting the word out about the municipal program that's up and coming. I was fortunate enough through one of my research contacts to attend a meeting of the New Hampshire Task Force, and it was the outreach and education subgroup that I had the pleasure of sitting with. And the information I learned there sparked my imaginings of beginning a compost program at a local school with which I am associated. Taking the municipal model to a smaller, more manageable scale, sort of my own mini pilot program. Thanks to the smaller scale on which it would be based, and a school's relative autonomy regarding both its lunch program and its surrounding grounds, I was able to omit many of the rules and regulations that come into play on a statewide level. So I chose Marlborough School. I'm a fairly new resident of the town of Marlborough, and I have a first grader that's attending that school. I figured what better way to get started and get involved and start educating about composting than by starting with the young ones. So my first step was crafting a proposal detailing my ideas. I relied heavily on John Cotter's well-established 8-step process to successful change, which I know the students are familiar with. It provided me the opportunity to examine and reflect on the language I use within my proposal and the goals I was hoping to achieve. I knew I needed to develop my vision for the change I was proposing and artfully communicate that vision as I would see it carried out, were it entirely up to me. Building a coalition, in this case my proposal audience, was paramount to the sustainability of the program overall. Because realistically, this endeavor will depend on teachers and staff involved to carry out the objectives and the legwork of the program. And it was my job within my proposal to share with them and empower them to act upon my vision. So I met with the principal, Robin Whitney, on April 2nd, having given her my proposal a week prior to that. And she was happily receptive to my ideas. I was eager to explain how getting the teachers and staff involved and excited about the program could easily translate into the students' excitement to learn about it, while treading lightly about incorporating the science behind it into the teachers' existing curriculum. I did include suggestions about allowing the children to take stewardship of their own environmental, play and potential learning outcomes regarding the process of composting, such as learning about natural life cycles, studying the biology and chemistry of the microorganisms that are at play in a compost pile, even down to selecting the seeds for the garden. They're all valuable learning tools. So from pre-kindergarten to 8th grade, at every age, at every stage, there's something to learn and some way they get incorporated into their curriculum. So it's been proven that skills learned at a young age, particularly developmental stages, stay with us for years into adulthood. So good habits and bad habits are often unconsciously adopted during our formal education years. So I figured rooting some environmentally friendly practices and interesting facts about composting was a great avenue to explore and a good place to start. You'd be hard-pressed to find a child that doesn't like playing in the dirt. My kid does, and look how happy that little girl is. So we're all trying to get them to eat healthier these days. No cookies, have an apple, have a banana, something. So why not get them excited about turning that apple core or that banana peel or the clementine rind into something useful that they can use to later on help them grow bountiful veggies or beautiful flowers. So they can be playing in the dirt and be doing a world of good. So Marlborough School was already an ideal subject. Not only do they already recycle paper and aluminum cans, but they also have a garden. Unfortunately, I was not able to get a picture of their garden due to all the weather we've been having. The garden doesn't look like a whole lot right now, but they do have one, and they utilize the garden in recent years. And all the vegetables they produce there go back to the school's cafeteria to be used in crafting the lunches. They also provide healthy options like apples in the hallways and in the offices for the schools to snack on during the day, for the kids to snack on during the day. So a few composting bins around the school made perfect sense. So many schools have adopted the practice of creating and cultivating gardens within their grounds. Some are inspired by the knowledge that food security still remains an issue for a lot of school children these days. Others are seeking the educational, environmental, or social benefits that are inherent with tending a garden or a greenhouse. The top picture is an example of a successful school garden in Mount Desert Elementary School in Maine. So being an island community, the largest island off the coast of Maine, so much of their fresh produce needs to be shipped in from the mainland. So they're working with the Natural Resources Council of Maine to create and foster sustainable practices within their communities and keep most of it on the island. The School Garden Resource Center in Connecticut is currently partnered with 12 schools in the New Haven area and actively works with over 15 site-based garden projects within the city. Did you know that Greenfield High School in Massachusetts, they implemented composting programs in 2016, and within a week were reporting a 75% diversion of waste overall, which was huge for them to see and know that rooting and successfully institutionalizing the change in their culture was actually providing some benefits for them, measurable benefits, and they are still going strong. So did you know that between 5 and 15% of total daily waste at an average elementary school is compostable food scraps? So some of what you pack them for lunches is getting tossed. Many successful academic composting programs begin by conducting a food waste audit. The NRRA, remember not the NRA, has a food waste audit tool that they distribute to schools by request, in order for the students to really get involved and investigate where all these statistics, these problematic ones, are happening. The data gained from an audit, which is primarily purchasing costs and weight comparisons of food distributed versus food wasted during lunch times, can help them with developing strategies to reduce overall amounts of wasted food and shine some light on the cost-saving benefits of composting. So due to the waste audit requiring pretty much statewide, school-wide participation, it is often a more in-depth project. However, it can be instrumental to embedding the new ideas necessary with successful behavioral change within an organization. Food waste audit was not included in my recommendation to Marlborough School. However, my contact, Sarah McGraw at the NRRA, she's happy to provide the tool should Marlborough School seek to conduct an audit. So each of those examples require not only the understanding of the problem by the students and teachers involved, but a cultural shift of understanding that change within their behaviors and awareness of the greater issues surrounding them calls for a re-examination of the way things are currently being handled and strategy sessions to determine the next phase of action. Organizational change is not often an easy endeavor to undertake. So getting at the root of the issue, driving the desire for the change, is at its core and instrumental to adopting the change. Overcoming potential barriers and/or obstacles is a critical step one must address when attempting to institute change in any setting. So in communicating my vision, I sought to tackle some of the pre-existing notions that are typical when considering composting. Many people think, okay, well, it sounds good, but it's messy and it stinks. While that's not completely untrue, many good compost piles, when they're starting, often smell like raw earth. And I don't know about you, but especially in the spring and everything, I love that smell. The problem many home or smaller scale composters run into is that they're not mixing their piles with filler or bulking materials, such as dry leaves, sawdust, shredded paper, cardboard. It's the lack of these that allow the fruit and veggie scraps and everything to to ferment so that it smells bad, so it becomes more odorous. And also trying to compost with meat or dairy products is a bit trickier because those require different processes to break down, and therefore they can be more odorous. My recommendations for Marlborough School included suggestions of fillers such as the landscaping debris that they already collect, toilet paper rolls, present in every school, coffee grounds and filters from the teacher's lounge, egg cartons from the kitchen. Even most brands of industrial paper towels are compostable, and they make great bulking agents. The ones we use at Antioch are compostable. I was also sure to note tactics of keeping critters away that are sometimes drawn to odorous compost piles. A few of the things I learned while drafting my proposal were, despite my enthusiasm, I needed to slow my pace and take things step by step to lay out my ideas. I wasn't seeking donor funding or looking to rock the boat dramatically, so much of my proposal was based around adding value to the practices that the school already employs. One key aspect I intentionally tackled within my proposal was to approach it holistically from a systems level point of view. This project would require assistance from several members of the school community, most notably the custodial crew and the kitchen cafeteria staff, each one being as important as the last, all the way down to the students. So keeping my audience in mind, the staff, the administration, the teachers, I needed to start at the beginning, keep things clear and concise, and highlight significant outcomes and benefits, and keep the whole thing exciting. So Principal Whitney was more than willing to speak with her staff and a few of the science teachers to gauge interest. She suspected at least one would be enthusiastically on board. She promised to get back to me regarding their decision about whether to move forward and when to start. So I'm fortunate to have cultivated a good rapport, and I expressly made myself available for any questions that may arise. And if any barriers creep up, I can be instrumental in enabling action to remove or alleviate those barriers, thus building on the gains already begun. I do consider it a short-term win that they are willing to consider my proposal seriously. It's a first step to instituting change, and I celebrate it fully. And for your listening efforts and attention during this presentation, I thank you.